Hey, CFL fans. Lately, there's been a lot of talk about the CFL rule changes, and specifically, there's been criticism of Nathan Rourke's emotional reaction the day after it was announced. First, I fully support Nathan Rourke. He loves something very passionately, and if you love something that passionately, you're going to react passionately. Let's give him a break. This was the day after it was announced. It takes time, as it did for me, to process all of the changes. So that was his initial reaction. There's also been talk of Americanization of the CFL, and a lot of people are brushing that aside. And come on, again, give people a break. Given the real current political climate that we're in, it is a very raw nerve for us Canadians. So brushing this off is just naive and actually plain disrespectful. And we can't take the culture out of this discussion. People are saying, oh, we need to just focus on the game and not the culture. Let me ask you, what does the C stand for in CFL? It's Canadian. This is our game. So I want to address a few things. First, there's been a lot of talk that change is good. It's a battle between modernization versus the status quo. Specifically, I love Farhan Lalji. You have a great mind, a great football mind. I love your analysis and all that. But you keep pushing. Change is good. And criticizing for people for not embracing change. Now, I'm not against change, but I am for progress. There's a distinction there. Progress is change for the better. Change just for the sake of change is just plain silly, right? We all agree that the league is dying and we got to do something. I agree. But again, we can't just make changes for the sake of we got to do something. So what are we trying to fix? As an engineer, I've worked as an engineer my whole life in the tech industry. I've been trained to always think first, what is broken? I mean, we're problem fixers, but before we can fix the problem, we got to know what's broken. And then we ask the question, how do we best fix it? It's important, or else we end up fixing things that are not broken. Or worse, we end up spending a lot of time and resources coming up with solutions for problems that don't exist. So what's the biggest problem for the CFL? Teams are not making money. The fan base is not growing. No one, not a single person, not the commissioner, not Farhan, not the TSN talking heads, have articulated to me or to everyone, because who am I, right? To everyone, how these rules will address this problem that the teams are not making money and the fan base is not growing. And secondly, are you telling me that of all the improvements that we can make, such as promoting our stars like Nathan Rourke, such as engaging with the youth, flag football, engaging there, instead of abdicating that and letting the NFL do that, creating video games for our youth, or co-marketing with brands, and many, many more, out of all these possible improvements, are you telling me that these rule changes give us the biggest return for growing the fan base and for teams to make money? How many people have said, I hate the Rouge so much that I'm never going to watch a CFL game? I know a lot of people say they don't like the Rouge, but how many have said that because of the Rouge that they don't watch the CFL? Personally, I agree with some of the incremental improvements. The automatic play clock to 35 seconds with proper tweaks for the last 3 minutes, I'm all on board with that. That's progress. Benches on opposite sides, that's progress. In fact, we should have done that a long time ago. Standardization of fields across the league, absolutely. And you can even convince me to tweak the Rouge for non-returnable plays. Although I love the Rouge as it is, I can be convinced with that. But changing the field size and moving the goalposts, I don't agree with that. The main reason being, I can't see how this addresses the problem of teams not making money and the fan base not growing. If you really wanted to tweak the lengths of the drives, we could always change the starting positions for drives and kickoffs. And that'll tweak the length of the drive that the team needs to march down. We don't need to change the field for that. So this doesn't make sense for me. But again, none of these rule changes are going to bring in more fans, nor will they increase the team's revenue. So what are we going to end up doing? We're going to end up pissing off the diehard fans for little or no gain. And for what? So that we can say that at least we're doing something about this? No, we got to be smarter than that. Lastly, I want to address all this talk about how Rourke's views don't represent the views of CFL players or coaches. You said that in your Farhan cast, Farhan. So let's see, who's come out so far to talk about this? Rourke, O'Shea, Miller, Darren Durant, they've all come out to say that they're against the rule changes. On the other side, we've got people like Nick Arbuckle, Bo Levi Mitchell, and I'm sure there's others there. These are just off the top of my head, who have come out to say, yeah, it looks good, they support that. I'm going to say something that's a bit controversial here, and this is my opinion, so take it with a grain of salt. But I think that only Canadians' opinions matter in this debate. We'll still hear opinions and listen to the views of the non-Canadians. We will want to get as much data as we can. But why do I say this? I say this because this is affecting a Canadian cultural icon. The CFL is our game, and hopefully will continue to be so for future generations. I'll give you a silly example. For example, our Canadian dollars come in different colors for the different denominations. The US dollar, on the other hand, They're all green. So let's say in the US they had a debate on whether or not they should change the colors of different denominations of the US dollar. Now, I have an opinion. I think that's a great idea. But my opinion doesn't matter because this decision has to be made by the Americans for themselves, whatever the pros and cons are. In the same way, these rule changes are going to affect the Canadian football. Even though I value and I respect people like Bo Levi, Darren Durant, those are great Canadian football players. But because we're affecting the fabric of Canadian football, I think this is a decision that we have to make as Canadians. Because again, regardless of which side you're on, we can all agree that these rule changes is going to affect a fundamental part of our game. It's a fundamental change to our game. So lastly, I want to address Nathan Rourke. I fully support you. Thank you for standing up and taking the position that you have. There's a lot more of us standing behind you on this issue than what Farhan thinks. So thanks for listening for this, right? And we'll catch you next time.